Did John Calipari just become the latest high-profile college basketball coach to call out Scott Drew? Or is he actually defending Scott Drew?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Rogue Media Network. Joining me, as always, on Wednesdays, Sydney Wicker of KCEN Channel 6. It is a Wicker Wednesday coming at you. And boy, do we have some more updates. We're going to be hearing from college basketball coaches near and far, all over the country, commenting on this Scott Drew, James Nnaji, Baylor NBA Summer League situation. We're going to be hearing from Nicki Collen as well, and some of the suggestions she might have as to how we can at least get clearer on this. And then, since it is New Year's Eve, we will talk about our New Year's resolutions for the Baylor Bears athletic department. We'll start here, Sydney. It's all coming up on Locked On Baylor, but we'll start here. You get back. We all kind of get back, right? We reset after the Christmas holiday and before New Year's, and it's usually a pretty slow week in pretty much any field that you're in. And then this James Nnaji thing happens. And Sydney, I'm telling you, it's like every day, every hour, something new. In fact, right before we were recording, we had something new come out. It's just every day there is a new angle, a new wrinkle, someone with a new point to prove about this whole situation.
Yeah, I think that just really speaks to the history, I guess, we're witnessing and the craziness that it is. You know, this hasn't really been done before. There's a lot of questions about it, a lot of people who are really mad about it, and a lot of people who just want more answers. And I think that's just continued to become more clear. I know when I first heard about it, I was very much on vacation mode with my family. And I was like, wait, is this allowed? Like, what? How did they find a loophole? And are there going to be repercussions? Is this really a loophole, or is somebody reading something wrong? You know, I think even as like people who are fans or people who cover teams like this, there's just so many questions about what exactly is going on right now.
Yeah, and like to that point about the loophole, like we did the crossover on Monday, me and a couple of the other Big 12 hosts, and we kind of talked through this whole situation. And Leif Thulin, who does Locked On Wildcats, Arizona, big NBA draft guy, he kind of gave that perspective. And then afterwards, after we stopped recording, he goes, "Does anybody know why this is allowed though?" When did that change? You know, it was always whatever, the end of May, where you could keep your name in the hat for the NBA draft or go back. And then all of a sudden we've got this new situation, and coaches are speaking out about it. Tom Izzo famously said, shame on not only the NCAA, but shame on Scott Drew. And John Calipari, another one of the elder statesmen in college basketball at this point, loves a good microphone in front of his face, kind of went off in a post-game press conference. And I saw a lot of people saying that this was John Calipari calling out Scott Drew. I actually personally think it's the other way, but I will let you all decide.
Well, look, I don't blame coaches. You know, I've got friends that are playing with 27-year-olds and they feel bad. I said, don't feel bad. We don't have any rules. Why should you feel bad? But let me give you this. Real simple. The rules bees the rules. So if you put your name in the draft, I don't care if you're from Russia and you stay in the draft, you can't play college basketball. Well, that's only for American kids. What? If your name is in that draft and you got drafted, you can't play because that's our rule. Yeah, but that's only for American kids. Okay, now, here's the next lawsuit. Well, we don't have a say over European players. You do if they're playing in college basketball. So that means you don't have a say over high school kids. So whatever a high school kid does before he comes here, don't you do one thing because there's a suit. Because what you're saying is, if he's in Europe, we don't have the same rules. What?
So Well, I want your take on that, Sydney. He's clearly upset with kind of the rules or lack thereof, but I read it as he's not attacking Scott Drew for doing this. He's saying, look, the rules suck, but we don't have the rules. And he's saying, the NCAA says it only counts for American players and how much that sucks. But to me, I don't think that's him firing shots. I think that's him kind of saying in his own John Calipari way, what are we doing here?
Absolutely. The always animated John Calipari.
Always.
He is always going to share his opinion, that's for sure. And I think when he said that, I was surprised too when you told me a lot of people are taking this personal. A lot of people are saying, this is at Scott Drew. Like he posted this on Twitter himself and added Scott Drew. No, that's not at all how I read this. I think the general consensus that we have felt and seen all across social media is, what are we doing here? How do we move forward? It's just a lot of question marks. And, we earlier, just said about how is this allowed? We didn't even understand it. Other people are trying to figure it out themselves. And I think it's more at the NCAA, how is this allowed? I think that's more of the target, and the questioning goes to the NCAA as a whole. But it's just another big question mark. And I think he really just emphasizes that in his own way of how are we at this point? How is it 2025, almost 2026? We're just now learning about this. And has this always been allowed? What are we doing here?
Yeah. And by the way, that's pretty much what happened to Scott Drew too. He's admitted, I didn't know we could do this until a month ago. We didn't know this was an option. And I think that's where coaches' anger should be towards. And again, people will say I'm just a homer, but to me, the anger should be more towards the NCAA and why aren't we enforcing it? Or why is this the rule? Or is there not a rule here? Why is this so easy to get around and not, bad boogeyman Scott Drew? Let's hear from Purdue coach Matt Painter, who himself has been outspoken at times. I think he kind of hits the nail on the head, I would say, for most college basketball coaches here.
Yeah, we just want to know the rules so we can abide by them. We don't know what's going on. So that's what I would say. We need some leadership. We need somebody to step up and here's how it's ran. Here's name, image, and likeness. Here's the transfer situation. Whatever. We can go on to all these different examples and give us the rules. We'll abide by them. Because that's who the rules are for. The rules aren't for the people who cheat. The rules are for the people that abide by them. And so that's where this all goes down, and there's no communication. We just want to know. Tell us what to do. Tell us how to go about it. And then we'll go from there. And there's just a lot of gray area right now.
I think that is perfectly fair. I think that is I'm perfectly sympathetic towards that, Sydney.
Yeah, he mentioned the gray area of college athletics. That's something head coach Nicki Collen even talked about. Nobody understands how things are supposed to work in college athletics right now. Do there need to be more rules? Is there what more can we do to make this fair for everybody? And that's just the question mark. It's not just with this situation as a whole. It's with NIL. It's with revenue share. This is really just part of it. And people just wanting to compete fairly. He, talked about there's a difference between cheaters and people who follow the rules. Well, is it cheating if this is a part of the rules and people just didn't realize it? I think that's a really good point. That to me felt a little more directed than what John Calipari said. But I think everyone is just really frustrated and trying to understand. And I still think overall that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And honestly, we know what the NCAA has been like the last, really forever, but we've seen it a lot the last decade. We're seeing them lose in court a lot in the 2020s as these things start to move. It kind of got the wheels in my head turning, one of them in my head turning about have we been getting recruiting violations wrong? Have we gotten impermissible benefits wrong? You know what I mean? It seems so open-ended in the NCAA. And so that's where I hear Matt Painter and I'm That's perfectly reasonable gripe there. Like in a pro sports landscape where there's unions and a CBA and a commissioner, no, like don't come at me with you don't know the rules. Come on. But in the NCAA where it's kind of the Wild West, I do understand that. I want to get one last quote in here from a prominent college basketball coach. It's Dan Hurley. And he said that I'm going to take just part of it here. He said, the frustrating part is that we're all willing to adapt and play this new game in this new era of, I guess, college sports. Like we've seen that, right? With the transfer portal and NIL, BYU, UConn, absolutely. They're playing ball. And so he says, or whether it's the G League, I don't know what exactly we're in right now, but it's a frustrating game to play when you don't know the rules and the rules are being made up as you go and there's no communication and no leadership. And to me, I think that's where what it comes down to. Is because I like Scott Drew, there's probably some of that in there. But to me, that's what it comes down to. So, Sydney, final word on this segment. Should college basketball coaches be mad at the player, in this case, the coach, Scott Drew, or be mad at the game, in this case, the NCAA?
I think you got to be mad at the game. You can take it out on Scott Drew if you want, but what's that doing? Like he found the answer to a problem that he's facing right now with his own team, and this is what he's doing to still try to be successful. He's a competitor. He will compete until the last buzzer goes off. Like he's going to be fighting through it. So if you're going to be mad at the game.
And I know this didn't need to be put out there, but you're telling me that John Calipari wouldn't have taken that chance? Look, I'm happy that Cal more or less stood up for Scott Drew there. But as we have seen with the Final Four banners that do not hang in the arenas that John Calipari used to coach in, I think it's fair to say he would, and most college basketball coaches would have taken that as well. When we come back, let's talk about what the NCAA is doing about this. The head of it, Charlie Baker, put his foot down. What are they changing? We'll tell you next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys like Fridays? Not the restaurant that's slowly dying, but I mean like Fridays. I like Fridays, especially during basketball season. Every Friday night before the NBA games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. It is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. From 5 to 6:30 Central, that has become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. It's easy to check the weekly specials before the tip-off and make a move before the window closes. I'm talking boosts, bonuses, surprises. It's awesome. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday. Again, that's 5 to 6:30 Central, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Coming back to it on Locked On Baylor, we're still trying to make sense of the whole James Nnaji situation a week later, and the college basketball world is responding. A lot of coaches around college basketball are not happy with James Nnaji being able to come in and play for Baylor right away. As Sydney and I have talked about on the show so far, that's a game problem, not a player problem. You're actually mad at the NCAA and not doing anything about this. You're not really mad at the coach. And Sydney, before we actually read it off, I was waiting for how the NCAA was going to respond to this. And I think what we saw with this response is they got nothing. So before we get to that response, does it surprise you at all with how this organization has been run, especially recently, that something like this, a loophole like this, is able to happen in our new NIL, transfer portal, G League, and now NBA draft, NBA summer league era of college basketball?
No, not one bit. And it's as simple as that. Like, what did you expect out of the NCAA? Like, I wasn't surprised by the statement, nothing. Like, it's just, what do you do? And that leads again to the frustration. Like, if the people in charge, so-called, of the organization, or, you know, whatever, can't even figure out how this is allowed, that just points back to why everyone is so confused about this. Like, there's no right or wrong right now. It's an open field when there needs to be more structure, and there's so many ways you can model after, you know, the professional leagues, and you can find ways to build your system and to draw from examples of how others have done it. And then NCAA just tries to find ways to do new things all the time, and then just ends up being in situations like this where they have no answers.
Yeah. And the biggest names in the sport are calling on the NCAA to have an answer here. Well, Charlie Baker, president of the NCAA, came out with a statement, and boy golly, is the organization putting its foot down. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, but it's kind of tough to read, so I will read off it as well. I'm going to paraphrase or just use part of it. The NCAA has not and will not grant eligibility to any prospective or returning student athletes who have signed an NBA contract, including a two-way contract. As schools are increasingly recruiting individuals with international league experience, the NCAA is exercising discretion and applying the actual and necessary expenses bylaw to ensure that prospective student athletes, yada, 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 can't sign an NBA contract, basically is what he's saying there. And at the end, this is great. I will be working with D1 leaders in the weeks ahead to protect college basketball from these misguided attempts to destroy this American institution. And this statement dropped just minutes before we recorded this. And Sydney can attest to this. I said, hey, I need a couple extra minutes. I need to go over this. I need to see what this actually means. And the verdict is in. Foreman of the jury, please. This means nothing. This means absolutely nothing in this case. James Nnaji has not signed an NBA contract. This rule that Charlie Baker is talking about here, that was already the rule. That was already there. What we're asking, and what the sport is asking, is, hey, this guy hasn't signed a contract, but he was drafted into the NBA. Like, that's a clear intent to go play in the NBA. You shouldn't be allowed to go back to college after that. It's kind of the way we've treated this. And Charlie Baker was like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to come out with a statement. Can't sign a contract. Brilliant. This guy has not signed a contract. Not one way, not two way, not any way. He played in the summer league, but you don't sign a standard NBA contract to do that. So, Sydney, to me, this is just, it's just fugazi.
Yeah. It's almost like, why say something when you're saying nothing at all?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I think the craziest part is just the ending, where he just says, you know, we're working with D1 leaders, you know, to figure this out and to protect college basketball and college athletics. Like,
yeah, sic semper tyrannis, Charlie. Yeah, baby.
It almost is like, is this real? Like, was this statement necessary? People have been calling for action and answers. And what do you say? Oh, well, we'll look into it. Like, that's the answer a week later?
I can picture Charlie in the Indianapolis office just send tweet. He gets his staff on the phone. You know, he's got the little thing there on speakerphone. He goes, don't worry about it, guys. I've got it handled. And someone minutes later is like, you know, Charlie, that was actually already the rule. You didn't fix anything. They fixed nothing with this statement. They just did it to pound their own chest. And some non-educated people are rolling with this and being like, hell yeah, they're fighting back. No way this kid's going to be able to play. No, he's going to be able to play. That doesn't solve anything. You actually brought to my attention a great kind of wrinkle in this, I guess is a way to put it. And it comes from Nicki, Collen, Baylor's women's basketball coach. And she talked at length about it. Okay, we're just going to keep it to right about 80 seconds, which is a little long for our podcast anyway. But she talked about what this means for college sports and possibly what the NCAA can actually do to fix this.
And I think the unique challenge for me and for people that really care about young people is, are we setting them up for success? Are we setting them up for failure? And that is my greatest fear with what's going on, is are we going to send them out into the real world and, you know, they have to get a real job. And I'm not suggesting they don't work for their money in college. That's not the point of this. But I do believe that I want every player that puts on a Baylor uniform to leave here and be prepared for what's next. And, you know, when you get in this portal world and everything else, are we doing that, you know? And so I've coached with a collective bargaining agreement. I worked off a hard cap. I don't have all the answers. There's smarter people about that than me. But I do think the world we're living in is very uncomfortable and not realistic long term. And I just hope that people smarter than me figure out how to keep young people the priority, how education stays a priority, but that we do right by them as well. Like, this isn't about not having them have opportunities, whether it's NIL or otherwise.
So I find the crux of that really interesting, you know, like what it does for the student athlete more so than the program. But what I wanted to focus on here real quick before we head to break is, you know, the part about CBAs and unions and potentially a commissioner. You know, that's a world Nicki Collins worked in the WNBA. And as much as it can be messy at times, that solves a lot of the problems that the NCAA has right now. So as we get deeper and deeper into this, Sydney, I'll keep it brief, but like, are we going to need to be in a world in the next few years where the NCAA has collective bargaining agreements between the universities and the student athletes?
I mean, plain and simple, it seems like something's got to happen. Like, there needs to be some kind of structure so that there's not constant questioning and so that everybody's on an equal playing field. They talk about that so often. Like, they don't care really what the rules are. They just want to know what they are so they can all compete and they can compete equally. And I think that's really where a lot of the frustration comes. I think something funny too, Nicki Collen was asked about her experience being in the WNBA. And they were like, do you think like situations like this, having that experience helps you? And she goes, no, not at all. I wish it did. But like, that's the gray area we're in. And that's really the emphasis here. We need some kind of structure because we're constantly coming back to this with more questions.
Yeah, I would say it's almost the adverse effect, right? Like in the WNBA or in the NBA or any professional sports, there are, and Tom Izzo actually talked about this during the rant, there's all kinds of guidelines. You know, you can only get a player at this point. You can only sign a player to this much. You can only sign for this long. You can only do a buyout at this point in the season. You can only do this at this point and this at this point. And you still have to pay even if you release this player. You know, there's a lot more structured. So when you come into this and it's the Wild West and there's no CBA and there's apparently new rules, like that to me is completely different. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And do us both a favor, like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot. We do have to shift our focus a little bit. Well, we don't have to, but we're going to. It is New Year's Day tomorrow, and we're all putting in our resolutions. What are the resolutions for Baylor athletics? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. You want to head out and see James Nnaji play this year? Game Time, that's the place to do it. I'm telling you. Or maybe you just want to see leagues that already have CBAs and have rules in place. And you could just get your college sports from me. Game Time can help you out with that too. The part that used to be frustrating, though, getting tickets, that was the long queues, the logins, the prices jumping at checkout. Good news. That, like 2025 in a few hours, is a thing of the past. Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing tickets, college football, college basketball, anything in just a few taps. I open the Game Time app, I look at my upcoming events, and I see right there what the best deals are. I've got zone deals where I just pick the section, they pick my seats, and I know I'm getting the best deal available. And I see college football, college basketball tickets as low as $20. Plan a game day trip, and I know all the fees up front. It can't get any better than that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Do it today. Back here on Locked On Baylor, Cam Stuart, Sydney Wicker. Sydney, have you ever had like a great New Year's resolution that you followed through on and that you were really proud of?
Well, recently I always make New Year's resolutions. I just kind of like to do it. But recently, within the last 3 years, I set a word for the year, and I try to hold myself accountable to that word, like being more grateful and just trying to really, reflect and be, present in moments where I can be more grateful. Or, 1 year, I was I really just want to be more eager. I want to get after it a little bit more. I want to really fight for my name in rooms that I'm not always in, and just give myself a better shot. So I like to pick a word every year. And I usually do good at that. Going to the gym, always on there. I slack. As soon as football season comes, I'm why can't I keep my routine? It's just awful. But yeah, that's probably the thing I've been the most consistent about is sticking to my word for the year.
Do you have your word for the year yet? Or is that
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, but I don't have my word yet this year. I'm thinking about it. Do you have a word? Have you thought of one?
No, I really like that idea. And the first one I thought of when you were saying it would be grateful. I'm terrible at that. As you could, some of you can probably tell by my cynical nature on the show. It sometimes takes some extra effort to be you know what, it's not that bad. And I really like this right now. And I'm in a good spot. Maybe because I'm too eager sometimes, but I like that though. No, I'm terrible at them. I'm terrible at resolutions. I try to set goals for myself professionally every year, and I at least stick to them. I don't reach all of them, but a couple years ago, some of you, if you were still following me, I think this is 23. I tried to watch 200 new movies, new to me. I think the number was 200, and I reached about 153. And I was doing them on Twitter. I was rating them all. It was really fun, but you know what happened? Football season happened. That's exactly what happened. And it was that September, I believe, was when I first started doing Locked On Baylor. So I definitely didn't have the time.
Which that sounds like something I need to do, because if you ask me, have you ever seen this classic movie? My answer is always no. If it's classic, probably haven't seen it. Sorry.
Yeah, I get that. That is every once in a while, my fiance will be like, "Are there any movies that I should watch?" And I'm like, "Boy, golly, do I have them!" I've never steered her wrong yet, so she's got to trust me a little more. That's all. That'll come with the ring and everything. All right, now that we've talked about that, it's time to set some goals for Baylor. Set some New Year's resolutions for Baylor athletics in the year of our Lord, Anno Domini 2026. Do you have? Let's do a couple. Do you have a New Year's resolution for Baylor?
Yeah, I think when you first asked me to think of some New Year's resolutions for Baylor athletics, I just think the first thing that came to my mind is finishing as a program. Baylor athletics has been, I feel relevant, but they're not relevant enough to where I feel everybody's talking about them as a household name. Men and women's basketball both make it to the NCAA tournament, but then fall in the second round. Baylor football is supposed to have a really good year this year. Kind of crap the bed, and I just feel there's been a lot of times where they've been okay, volleyball, they make a postseason run. And it's pretty short, it's just you get there and you can check another box off the list, but it's let's finish and let's keep this going. So I think overall, Baylor needs to find better ways to finish. I think soccer probably had the most successful year out of all Baylor athletics, making it to the Sweet 16 and falling in a shootout. That's crazy. They could have gone. They had one more shot or a lucky shot fell their way. But overall, I would like to see Baylor finish.
Yeah, I when you said that, I thought women's basketball.
Yeah.
Quasi Big 12 championship game at home, real Big 12 championship game. Lost both of them in the last 2 minutes. That's not finishing. It's not finishing. The first one I thought of for Baylor New Year's resolutions was something that's actually come up this week from Drayton McLean and David Smoke. sell alcohol. And I get it. It's at football games mainly. I get it. I understand why some people don't want to do that at Baylor. It's not like I'm not one of those people that gets absolutely sloshed at football games. I don't judge those people. It's just not necessarily what I do. I like to have a couple of drinks. But the thing that it is for me, Sydney, more so than a moral thing, is like we're now hearing all the time about how, oh, we're looking to do everything to get more revenue, to gain more revenue. Like Baylor is one of the few schools in Division I that has put itself at this point at a major disadvantage game day revenue wise than most of the other schools in Division I, because they sell alcohol. Like that is such an easy way to get a lot more money for your program, especially one that's floundering right now in Baylor football. And, oh, you want that many people drinking in a stadium and then driving home? It's like, brother, everywhere else handles it. Every other stadium in America handles it, right? Like, if they're not doing it at the game, they're doing it before or after a game. That's something that happens every single night. It's not on Baylor. So that's my first one. Anyway, did you have a second one? Do you usually do more than one resolution?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I usually try to do like 3 or 4. I feel like another one I was thinking about is just like overall program stability. Like there has been so many questions. The whole Mac Rhodes situation, and where Baylor's athletic department is going now is interesting. So do you pull a 360 and change things up completely, or do you stay consistent? And I kind of gone back and forth. Like, do they need to keep it? And I was like, I kind of feel like at some point you need some change to happen, but it's going to take a charge to make that happen. So maybe Baylor, just in the broad sense, needs to consider change a little bit more. It's great seeing how many coaches have long tenures at Baylor. Scott Drew, like, it's awesome seeing how long he's been there. But overall, how long do you keep things the same before you try to change things up? Maybe Baylor needs to channel. Maybe their word for the year should be change.
That's a good one. And by the way, change does not equal instability necessarily. I think that's a common misconception as well. You can have change and have it be stable. That's actually pretty easy as long as you have a plan. That's a good one. I like that. My final one is kind of 2-in-1, if that's okay. And it has to do with one of my favorite, the great American game, if you will, the pastime, and that is the baseball team. First is to make the postseason. Can we make the postseason for the first time in 4 years? I think that the time is nigh. It's upon us. And I am a big Mitch Thompson believer. I really like the direction that this thing is going. But this will be year 4 of Mitch Thompson. And there's been encouraging signs. Let's make the NCAA tournament. Let's play in a regional. Let's have that. And furthermore, maybe something that can help them get there. Can I get some Sailor Bear with the baseball team is really the resolution. And I know before the people jump down my throat, I know why they can't do it yet. I know why, because the club baseball team has it as their logo. Can we work something out? Can we just this hat kicks ace. I love this hat. I wear it every episode. Imagine as an actual on-field baseball cap, maybe a little green brim, or green hat with it. I think it would look great, Sydney. I think that's really the most important resolution Baylor can make.
And I would be so here for it. There's got to be some kind of deal you can work out, because that would be that logo looks like it's made for a ball cap. We need great. That. A little patch on the jersey or the hat, whatever. I think it would be so sick.
Maybe something on
a little throwback look. It'd be nice.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for off-white kind of cream colored stuff. I like a vintage look to it. And a lot of college baseball teams, they're actually starting to kind of wear it out. But in the 2010s, there was a lot of that in college baseball uniforms, and Baylor never really did it. I think that would look really cool. Anyway, if you guys have resolutions for the Baylor Bears, let us know in the comment section below, and then be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you have a word suggestion for Sydney, a
Please.
PG word suggestion, because YouTube's a cesspool, let us know in the comment below, or for me, or for Dave Aranda, or for Scott Drew, or James Nnaji. Let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Happy New Year to you, Sydney, and Happy New Year to all those of you watching and listening, especially those who make it your first listen today and every day. We will see you in 2026 on the next episode of your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.